faster, more efficient way of doing it. But as you can see, it can be rolled straight up and reinforced. And again, virtually odourless, there's no real offensive smells at all. And non-tainting, so it can be done into food facilities without having to move food out of the area. If it's a bread making facility, they don't have to go and close rooms off and take all the food, put it into another area, or if you can do it adjacent. You see the recommendation, which is doing exactly right, is normally say we roll it one way and then we go across just to make sure that all the pores are filled, all the totally covered, and then normally lay off in one way.
You can see there is quite, when you pour it out, it's not mentioned when it uses immediate. That is of course the best. Large project, you walk around, spread it out, and then you do the cross roller. But you can see, depends on what kind of roller you're using. Sometimes in my presentations, so face preparation presentation, I'm talking about rollers as well. It means different sizes, the hair length of the roller. You as professionals, many of you know it. Some of them, or some of you maybe new, but in any case we have the finishing roller, the medium, the long hair rollers, and depends on what color roller you use with our material, you achieve certain degrees and of finishing as well as the consumption. We're talking about 300 to 400 gram, or you're jumping from 400 to 500 or 600 gram per square millimeter. So when you're on a smooth surface, if it is an anti-skid, you're jumping at 800 gram per square millimeter, something like that. But depends on the roller, the length, using material, they provide a certain quality. It's calculation, of course, on your side, as a client, and it's not you to provide, but around the roller play a big part.
Yes, and that's a good point what Mark's brought up. We've got this system in some reasonably heavy duty facility. Another very good question. So the question was, do we need a braid between coats? So with the I-302, if you're laying over it within 24 hours, you don't need to braid it between coats. You'll get the chemical bond. Bond through the first coat through its chemical compatibility. If it's outside of that window, then yes, you do need to braid. Epoxy dries very hard, if it's not abraded, you won't get that bond between the windows. What I call a glass transition, if it's very hard and it's white paint on the glass, you won't be able to get it down. So you must, it's outside, and abrading it just means using something like 100 grit sandpaper and running over. Demonstrate here is the System 32. So the System 32 is a primer coat. The primer is in with aggregate scattered into it, and then we had our first coat of I-302 also with aggregate scattered into it. And then we have a final coat, which we're doing now, over the top of that. So the consumption jumps up quite much when we're going over aggregate. As you'll see, as he finishes out the roller line, you can see it all soaking into the aggregate. The aggregate will pull a lot of that product down into it. So we're normally having to coat at least 0.5 kgs per square metre going over aggregate, fine aggregate like that, but you're best probably to budget on maybe 0.6 kgs per square metre, because you do use a lot more product when you're doing it over the non-slip floor. So the System 32, like all our non-slip systems,
of the rubber screening, you get a certain consumption, right? So if you use a metal spatula, you achieve as well a different consumption because the metal is strong and goes over the quartz sand, and you have a certain amount of material on the surface. Now I'll show you something. when you use a rubber squeegee. So you see how much material I push out already, but I push a lot of material also into the surface. Now you can imagine if I do this technique on a large surface, there are still applicators which are working in large areas. They are on their knees and they are scraping around. I don't know how many guys are used to it in your field here, but from my days we did it around the body and we have 3 guys in one line. And you can also use a rubber squeegee, the softer one. This is a hard one. It means if I'm squeezing over, I have less material. Less material means on 10,000 square meter, I have quite a shitload of money. But I push it in, I have also more binding in. So if I want more material, I get more material. But there's a difference between using a steel trowel. Even if I use a steel one, then it starts a different kind of consumption, a different way of moving material, also less. Here I can squeeze out way a lot. And then I do cross rolling, right? Only that you understand what different.
Any of the oils and fuels that they use in the aircraft industry. We've done helicopter hangers, aircraft hangers up and down the corner. So with the System 31, is it bold? Yeah, so this is a 0.9 kc. And these just get different levels of slip resistance. So we can provide for your architects the information that's required as to what levels that reaches, or the facility owners often know what sort of slip resistance. But because we have specified granular sizes, and this is mapei quartz differs to a number of the other quartz in that the quartz size is uniform right throughout the bag. So it's not a mix where you might get a 0.9 and a 0.1 and a 0.7 here and there. They're 0.5 or they're 0.9. So you get a very nice, consistent looking, smooth surface. Smooth but not slippery. More often to your customers. Normally, if you have an oil contaminated floor, you can't go near it because obviously any sort of oil in the concrete creates a barrier for those products to penetrate over here. Traditionally in New Zealand, you'll get the only other option is something like a purging another companies will sell, but then you're limited to how deep is that pipe, how deep is the contamination. You may end up doing 5 to 6 to 7 feet on it and then before you actually get that product out of it. Yes, that had sludge on it over 50 years. So it's a very, very effective primer and a real game changer as far as being able to.
I'm using as a surface preparation, again, surface preparation. But Scott mentioned already, we went on very quickly. It means if you do some freezing and washing and cleaning, then the water and everything starts to evaporate, and then you go quickly on. There is enough time for the reaction of the primer to penetrate into it, having the so-called addition.
We coat over an oil contaminated substrate, because where that will soak into the concrete, you get water in the concrete there, it just sits on the surface. There's no penetration, and that's normally a recipe for disaster. You're just putting standard epoxies on the top of it. Would you use this type of primer? The answer is yes, you would, because it creates the adhesion. It can be used under not just resin chlorine, it's a great solution for levelers. Roll this out of the floor, then it's cast the aggregate in, and that creates the adhesion for the levelers. One thing that I need to mention that's important is because it's designed specifically to repel oil and to adhere to that type of thing, it also creates an issue where it's very hard for the epoxy on top of it. If you don't cast aggregate into it, to get the adhesion to the primer. So it always needs a aggregate scattered into it. So if you're doing smooth coats over the top, you use something very light like our 0.25, and you just cast it in lightly, not suffusal, but just cast it in lightly enough that you've got a mechanical bond rather than a chemical bond.
Originally, scientifically, 3.5%. I worked for 2 years in Thailand, and then you can imagine Thailand is on the sun. It means there is a lot of moisture, and the construction, you're going to have all the PVC sheets and everything underneath, so it's quite a challenge. And there we use a lot of epoxy mortar screen, 8 mm minimum. Even use chemical burner moisture there, it wouldn't work very well. So the best in high moisture conditions and rising temperatures from below is an epoxy mortar screen, 8 mm minimum, with a high scaling fine profile of CSP7 somewhere there. And then wet application, not dry, don't let it dry or rather wet and wet.
So as you can see, it's reasonably thixotropic, a little bit sticky, but we never thin this down, we never suffocated by sort of solvent smell. And then if you're doing a smooth roll coat over it, you did the dusting with the 0.25, your mate, which we will run through a little bit later on. And now we're going to maybe have a quick break now, for 15-20 minutes, just have a cup of coffee or a tea. We'll get the boys to open the lane over here for anybody that wants to use the bathroom.